If you just installed an Outback Radian solar power system, then you're going to want to watch this video because I'm going to show you how to activate the system for full power once you've received approval from your power company. Hi everyone, Joe Ordia here for Solar Surge, and today I'm going to be showing you how to activate the Outback Radian hybrid solar power system. Now typically when you have your solar system installed, once the final inspection passes, there could be a 1 to 2 week delay between when the inspection passes and when you receive final approval from the power company to go ahead and bring your system up to full power. So what I'm going to be showing you in today's video is how to use the various switches and switchgear on the Outback Radian so that you can activate the system to make it fully functional once you've been given the go-ahead. Let's take a look. And first I'd like to start out with just introducing each of the individual system components. Now, usually when the Radian hybrid system ships from the factory, a lot of the major components are pre-connected and integrated on this board. And let me kind of walk you through so you know what you're looking at when you look at the unit here. The main engine of the system is the inverter. So the inverter is what does your DC to AC power conversion. It allows you to pull in DC power from the solar panels or from batteries, converts it to AC power, which can then be sent into the house to power your critical systems, and also can be pushed back out to the power company to sell excess power back. And so the inverter does all of those functions here. This is also a charger unit, meaning that it also can recharge batteries from an AC power source, either the utility grid or a portable generator as well, or a whole house generator. So the inverter unit, it can pull from DC and make AC power. It can also pull AC power and then use DC charge to recharge a battery bank. So your inverter does that. All right. Underneath the inverter is your load center, and this is where you have all your switch gear. So when we talk about switch gear, it's usually a circuit breaker or it's a disconnect switch. It's a means of disconnecting or isolating each of the individual components. So what you have here, you've got two large circuit breakers. These are your battery connection to the inverter. They're 175 amps each, and if we had to cut battery power to the unit, we cut these off here. You'll also notice there's a battery charge indicator light here on the just to the right of those circuit breakers. And then up here, I'm going to start at the top and kind of work my way down. So the top circuit breaker here is AC output to your critical loads in the house. Okay, so if I were to cut power here, all of my emergency loads panel would lose power. Now, this red clip here is called an interlock, and you have the AC output from the inverter is interlocked with the grid bypass switch. Now, the grid bypass switch is important because if the inverter ever were to have a fault or it needs to be serviced or work done on the unit, you can always fail back over to utility power by turning off the AC output, sliding up the interlock, and turning on the bypass switch. So now running back on utility power here. Now, under normal circumstances, you shouldn't have to use this at all. It's really only if the unit malfunctions or has to be serviced. So we'll go ahead and switch that back now. The purpose of the interlock is to make sure both power sources are not on at the same time. We're either going to feed the critical loads from the inverter or we're going to feed it from the utility grid, but not both at the same time. The interlock plate forces you basically to have one or the other or none. Okay, so working our way down here, the next connection here is the utility grid input. So this is the output circuit. Once the critical load circuits are powered inside the house, this is your connection out to the utility grid. This is a bidirectional circuit. You can pull power in from the grid as needed to help power loads at nighttime, and you can also export the excess solar power to the power company. So that's all done via this second circuit breaker here. Next one is the generator input. So the Outback Radian has two AC inputs, one for the grid dedicated, one for optionally a generator dedicated. And one of the features is that you can recharge your solar batteries. Let's say the grid's down, weather's bad, so the solar hasn't been able to keep the batteries up. You can always use a fuel burning generator to recharge your batteries. So that's this connection here. And then on the bottom half of the switchgear, these are your DC circuit breakers, one for each charge controller. So you've got charge controller here, charge controller here. Think of the charge controller as a solar battery charger. So you have solar power coming into the charge controller unit, and then it steps the voltage down to whatever the optimal voltage is to charge your battery bank. So that's the main purpose of the charge controllers. You have two of them here, and you've got two circuit breakers for both the solar input to the charge controller. So that's one circuit, solar panels on the roof feeding power into the charge controller, and then you have a separate circuit breaker for output from the charge controller to the battery bank. So these two at the top here, these are your charge controller to battery connections, and then these at the bottom, these are your solar input to the charge controller. So the solar panel to charge controller circuits. If we had to service either one of these units, we just cut all the power sources off here, and then we can safely work on the equipment. So that's your switchgear. Not a whole lot that you have to do here under normal operation. This can remain closed, and but at least you know if you have to bypass the unit for service or what have you, you know how to do that. That way, if the inverter ever needs service, you can switch over to utility power, and you know you're not going to be without power inside the home. So let's look at some of the other components on the board here. We already talked about the two charge controllers. So these are FlexMax 100 charge controllers, meaning that they can output up to 100 amps each onto the battery bus. And then lastly, you have your Mate 3, which is your system control panel. And this has all of the meters and buttons that allow you to look at how the system's performing and also make any adjustments to the settings. So let me kind of show you more closely what each of these buttons do. Okay, so we're taking a closer look at the Mate 3 control panel, and what we're looking at here is the home screen. And with a quick glance at the home screen, you can get an idea of what the system is doing. Let me walk you through each of the meters. First, up in the upper right-hand corner, you have your battery gauge. So you can see right now, battery's at 100%. There's no problem there. And then across the bottom, left to right, this is your solar power indicator. So it'll flash between instant solar power and total solar energy produced for the day. So right now we have 0.6 kilowatts coming in and 23.5 total kilowatt hours energy harvest for the day. The next button here is our battery voltage or our battery status. Now right now this system is a 48 volt DC battery system. But what you're going to see is the battery voltage normally is going to be in the range of 52 to 53 volts. And once we hit that 52, 53 volt threshold, all excess solar energy available will get inverted and pushed back to the utility grid. The next button we see here is the inverter. And so the inverter, this indicator here, will tell us how much power is flowing through the unit. Now right now, the system is configured as it would be right after an initial installation. And because there's a gap, usually about 2 to 3 weeks, after the system is installed, before the power company installs your new meter, that's why the system's not operating at full power now, because I'm going to show you a little bit later in this video how to activate the grid sellback feature. Right now, this is just operating as a backup system. And then the last meter here along the bottom is your utility grid status. And so it'll show you the voltage coming in from the grid. Right now we're getting 255 volts in from the grid. So that's right within that healthy range. You can also see this information here along the right-hand column. So again, at the top, this is your solar row. We've got 0.6 kilowatts coming in now. You've got your inverter status. And your inverter status will also indicate whether you're buying or selling. We'll show you that a little bit more later. and then this are the consumption of the loads within the house. So this little house icon here at the bottom, this is how much power is currently being consumed by the critical loads within the house. So just from the home screen here, you can get just about all the information you need to know about how your system is performing. However, if you want to drill down to some more advanced metrics and parameters, just press any one of the buttons and it will sort of drill down into that particular section. So if I click on the inverter button, for example, now I can see details like how much power is being inverted, DC to AC, how much is going to power loads within the house, if the generator is running, how much is being pulled from the generator, and also if the grid sellback was enabled, how much power is being sold back to the grid. Just go ahead and hit back, we'll take you back to your home screen. Now, one of the things that you're going to want to make sure that you do when you are ready to activate the system for full power, there's a couple settings that you want to make. So let me walk you through them here. Press the lock button. This is going to open up some of the advanced features. It's going to challenge you for a code or a password, and the password is 141. Okay. So let's say now your 2 weeks has passed, the power company has come out to install your new meter, and now it's time to activate the system for full power sellback. This is the settings that you're going to want to adjust. First, you want to go to this, under main menu, go to settings. And first we're going to go to battery monitor. All right. And next we want to go to shunt enable. You want to make sure that shunt A, B, and C are all enabled. That's very, very important because this unit has an advanced battery monitoring system. We want to make sure that the energy as it flows through the system, the system is able to track it properly. So we know how much is going into the battery, how much is coming out of the battery, how much is going back to the grid, and so forth. So that all looks good. A, B, and C, they all need to be enabled. And then once we've verified that, we can go to our inverter settings, and then we're looking for the grid AC input mode. Now by default, when the system is initially commissioned, it'll be in either a support mode or a backup mode, meaning that solar power will be used to keep the batteries charged up. It'll be used to help provide backup power to the house, but there's no excess sellback. So the only thing we have to do here, we change our input mode from support to grid tied. And now that will allow the unit to connect to the grid and start selling back. So I'm going to go back up here. And now that I'm back at my home screen, you'll notice that this icon in the bottom right corner has changed from what was a G, which stands for generator input. Now it knows that the AC connection is actually a utility grid input, and now we're going to see the unit starting to produce more power. So you'll notice here right now it's a partly cloudy conditions, but our solar is putting out 2 kilowatts of power, 2.3 kilowatts of power. The house is consuming 0.7 kilowatts, and we have 1.8 kilowatts, all the excess being sold back out to the power company. Again, if I hit that inverter button, I can kind of drill down and see more detail of exactly how the power flow is working. So right now we have 2.4 kilowatts being inverted, 0.6 going to the loads in the house, sell back 1.4 kW. And I'll just go ahead and hit back to my home screen. So this is basically how the buttons work, the controls that you're going to need to utilize on the screen. There's one more that I want to show you, which is the charger feature. So if you hit the charger button here and charger mode, you want to make sure that this charger control is on. And that's very important if you do have a fuel burning generator and you want to be able to plug that in and recharge your solar batteries, that charger control feature needs to be on. So just go ahead and verify that as well. So those are the basic controls on your Outback Mate 3 device. One other thing of note about the Mate 3 system is that this is an internet-enabled device. So all of the settings and meters that I just showed you, you can also access through the online monitoring platform called Optics RE. And so what you're going to want to make sure that you do is that you have an internet connection available here at the unit. It does have to be a hardwired connection. So there's actually an Ethernet cable that plugs in behind here. And so this Ethernet cable provides an internet uplink. And then once you have that, the only other thing you need is the MAC address of the unit itself, and you can register it for online monitoring. So folks, this has been a brief introduction and tutorial on how to get started with your Outback Radian hybrid system. As always, I'm Joe Ordia, encouraging you to get prepared and be empowered. And of course, if you find that the information on this channel is of value and helpful for you, be sure to go ahead and click on that subscribe button, and more importantly, go ahead and share this link with others that you think will benefit for it. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.